Jesus freak here. It's a rather brisk 52 or 11 for any of you outside the U.S. Now, I've been thinking a bit about one of the biggest divisions that I've noticed regarding what we might call the left and the right in the United States. I think what a lot of people seem to associate with the difference between left and right is they figure the left is more leaning authoritarian, the right more libertarian. It's I don't think that's really accurate. Especially since a lot of the current political right is extremely authoritarian. And while I consider myself generally on the political left, I tend to have a bit of a libertarian bent myself. See, what I think the real difference is a fundamental difference in a conceptualization of what the government exists for. Where some of us will say we believe that the government exists to protect the social order, and some will say we believe the government exists to protect the social welfare. To be fair, I think it's kind of like love and marriage, faith and works. You got to have one to have the other. And this kind of works in both directions. If you don't have social order, you have basically a might makes right system that leads to looting, and it could be by the poor, it could be by the rich. But either way, the system leads to wide scale looting. But if you don't have social order, if you don't have welfare, that's protect the social welfare, you have looting. If you don't have social order, you don't have social welfare. Of course, looting is a violation of the social order. So, but we've occasionally had, when programs to protect one or the other eventually get corrupted and then destroyed. You often have pilot programs. You have people who are like, oh, we need UBI, universal basic income. And I invariably say, if you look at similar programs, if you look at TANF, if you look at minimum wage laws, guess what happens? the purpose gets lost. One side decides that it's too much of a layout, and they starve it to death. And I said, that's invariably going to happen with like a UBI program. And I said, while I support the idea of a universal basic income, the devil's in the details. And that's why I don't support UBI. Another problem with a lot of these programs, when you have a social benefit program, you really have to think deep about how that program could possibly be corrupted. Perverse incentives. The classic example that most people give is a government for a city or something decides to deal with a rat problem by saying, bring in dead rats for disposal and we'll give you a bounty. They think people just go hunt rats and dispose of them, where they say to get the bounty. But instead, people start going and farming rats so they can get more of a bounty. And it actually winds up causing even more of a problem than it was supposed to solve. That's a perverse incentive. I think Paul was aware of perverse incentives in a spiritual context when he wrote about grace in the Epistle to the Romans. He said, shall we consider continuing to sin that grace may abound? That's sort of a spiritual example of a perverse incentive, and he shoots it down. Another problem that has happened here, and it's happened all over the U.S. from what I understand, is sort of out of control gentrification. Especially since 2020. You see, I moved into my current place in 2019. At the time, rent was $400. Okay? Now it's $580. The apartment didn't magically get worth more. Just certain people decided they could charge more and get away with it. And, when things get more expensive and the amount of money we have coming in doesn't keep pace, now, some of you guys want to crucify me for saying this, but it's been my experience. that when you have a Republican government, it's more likely that they're going to be like, we don't need to increase benefits. There's no point. We're spending too much on it as it is, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so the noose around the necks of people who rely on those benefits tightens. But usually under democratic governments, and I'm mainly talking democratic control of Congress more than democratic control of the presidency, there's at least an attempt to keep pace. You'll say, uh, uh, showing trust in government programs shows a lack of faith in God. We're supposed to be looking out for each other as human beings. Government's just one way to do that. And frankly, they're more reliable than trusting in private charity or churches because those rely on people giving a damn. Those of us who can afford to often don't. Not to rag on the rich, but above a certain point, it takes a level of sociopathy to get that rich. I read one person say, if we found one gorilla in a tribe was hoarding all the bananas, we wouldn't applaud the gorilla. We'd wonder what the hell was wrong with him. And Paul said it best. You can't take it with you. We need, food, clothing, shelter. That's enough. But they are needs. They are necessary for survival. But like someone like me will say, yeah, do I have creature comforts now and then? Sure. They make holding on to this miserable existence a little more comfortable. But that's different from trying to live in opulence. It's just trying to deaden the pain. Anyway, gotta see how ruined things are today. Because it gets annoying when the government decides to play a game of chicken with itself. Jesus, freak out.